Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. Depending on where you are, maybe it's evening, maybe it's morning, maybe it's the afternoon. Wherever it is, I hope the sun is shining or the world is treating you in a way in which you deserve. I hope that you realize that you are a miracle and that the world is conspiring to help you if you know where to look at. I've got a great show for you today. The one and only, I hope I'm going to pronounce your last name right. I was just thinking I should have asked her before. Kat Novotna.
Perfect.
Yes, I did it.
Thank you.
Kat is a forest therapy guide, founder of EcoNIDRA and Way Back Home. She's a mentor in presence and self-care, kintsugi artist, and mother of one little Viking, 14-month-old, I hear. Word on the street is her passion and mission are to help people reconnect with nature, with themselves, and with others. She has 20 plus years of experience in training and community building. And for those that are watching, there's a new book out right now, of which she writes multiple pieces in. And thank you, Randall Hansen. Randall, if you and Jenny are watching, thank you for this beautiful piece that we both have and putting everything together. And Kat, I would love to hear about, even though I've read snippets of the book without giving too much away, what led you to this relationship with what you're doing? Maybe you could explain what you do and the relationship of how you got there.
Thank you. Thank you for this
Yeah.
amazing, enthusiastic introduction. So, what led me to what I'm doing? What I'm doing is basically helping people remember what it feels like to be really relaxed, to be in your body, to be out of your overactive thinking mind, and to feel connected to nature, to the rest of the planet, and to yourself. And this can be done in different ways. There are so many ways to do that, and the two of them that I'm using are forest bathing and EcoNIDRA, which are both practices of nature connection. And of course, what led me to do it is my own experience of being disconnected and feeling a bit lost in this world and in this society. So yeah, that's why I discovered both of them.
It's interesting. Before we started, you and I were both speaking about, well, you were telling me a little bit about having what it's like to have a younger child. And I know from having a younger child, they seem to come into this world with such a connection to spirit and nature. And, on some level that helps us who is the parent start to realize like, wow, I've missed this part of knowing this understanding I've missed. And it's so wonderful to see this innate behavior and it's so reminiscent. Maybe you could touch on that a little bit. I thought you were explaining it wonderfully.
Absolutely. So I have a 1-year-old or a 14-month-old, and it's so fascinating for me to walk with him in the forest, to have him on my chest in the carrier. And he wants to go to the trees. He wants to touch the trees. He wants to smell the trees. He wants to explore them he wants to crawl in the mud on the ground, what children do.
Yeah.
So what you see is he's 100% in the present moment. He's 100% in his body. He is joyful from that sensation, from that exploration, from that curiosity, from that heart connection with everything that lives. And he even has one word for everything. He calls everything Dada. So a tree will be Dada, a cat will be Dada, but all living things, like a table wouldn't be a Dada. So he definitely, this pre-thought, pre-conceptual way of being, pure presence, pure heart connection, recognizes the rest of life, and that he's connected, and that he wants to get to know it with his body, with his senses. And then of course, all of us have this. We come with this connection, with this heart connection, with this embodiment into this world, to explore, to be, to connect. And then we lose it somehow in the process of schooling and education and your family and what people put into your head.
Yeah.
And it seems like in the second half of our lives, we kind of throw the programming, those concepts away, and we Most of us are asked or forced sometimes by the body to find again, to find our way to connect, reconnect again with ourselves, with our inner nature, with the rest of nature, with other human beings in a loving way.
I love the concept of inner nature, because so often we forget about that. Like we forget, there's that wonderful story about the scorpion and the frog, and the scorpion and the frog are down by the water, and the scorpion says, "Hey, we got to get across there." And he tells the frog, "Hey man, can I ride on your back and you just get us across?" And the frog's like, "Are you kidding? No way, you're a scorpion, you'll sting me." And so the scorpion jumps on the frog. Like finally, the scorpion convinces him, "Look, I'm not going to sting you. I want to get across there. So just give me a ride, man. It'll be fine. I'm not going to sting you." They get halfway across the river, and the scorpion stings them. And the frog is like, "What? Why would you do that?" And he said, "It's in my nature."
That's what we do.
That's what we do. We lose ourselves halfway through this whole unit, and so when you say inner nature, it makes me think of that story, but it also makes me think of the language of nature. Maybe you could speak to the idea that like the language of nature and how it speaks to us.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's actually one of my biggest interests, to explore and to find language for that. Because if you talk to people, most people feel good in nature, right? They
Yeah,
recognize that they feel better, they feel healthier, they feel more connected, they feel the problems of the life situation seem to be smaller. You kind of get
yeah,
distance from that. So people recognize that feeling, and I'm interested in seeing what is indeed the language that what's happening there.
right.
And there seems to be quite a lot of research already about the heart, the human heart, and the electromagnetic field of the heart,
Mhm.
that is actually to be found several meters, yeah, uh, it's quite a big distance from
Yeah,
the body. And every living being, so another human being, an animal, or a tree, or all living organisms, have the electromagnetic field as well. So we actually, before we found our language, the human language, the words that we use, we already communicated with the rest of nature through this language, and that was billions of years before. And it's the ancient way of language. And if you look at all ancient civilizations and groups, they all say that what they learned about plants, for example,
yeah,
plant medicine, that they learned it from the plants themselves. They didn't check Google, they didn't check books, they didn't even hear it. Sometimes they could hear it from an elder in the group, but usually they claim and they insist that they learned that from the plants themselves, and they actually mention something as the heart of the world. They
Mhm.
learned that knowledge from the heart of the world. And so that's the information that the electromagnetic field of the heart, or of the tree, is
Yeah,
communicating. So that's one aspect of the language that I love.
yeah. And I know that you have experienced this, and I have experienced it, and I'm hopeful that some of my listeners haven't. But for those that haven't, like there's something wonderful that happens when you find yourself in nature, and it's almost as if the answers are revealed to you, regardless of what your problem is. On some level, you could sit by a battered coastline and watch the way in which the waves roll up onto the shore. Or you could sit into a forest and watch the way the wind whistles through the trees. And then you could begin to understand like why maybe your relationship that you're in is going in the wrong direction, or being ruffled a certain way, or eroding something. This harmony that just is revealed to you.
Yeah.
It's nothing short of miraculous.
Yeah, yeah, and this is a universal human experience. It's just that in our
Yeah.
mind-based, brain-based society, we kind of reduce that, like, oh yeah, that's just your
Hmm.
imagination, or that's just something. But we all, almost all people, at some point, will have this experience that nature is actually talking to you, and that you get this indeed, this revelation, this inspiration, this brilliant idea. Even
Yeah.
Albert Einstein, he when they interviewed him, he said, "Well, I was, I'm a thinker, but the most brilliant ideas, including the theory of relativity, came to me after being in nature, after slow walks in nature that he was doing." And it's just amazing. So yeah, you can experience it, and then you have kind of a base to get back to. When you're in trouble, you always know that you can go to nature uh, and ask nature for help.
Yeah.
Rest your system, because we can only receive those messages when we are rested enough. So that's a powerful combination. That's why forest bathing and EcoNIDRA are working with really resting the human being, the nervous system, calming the heart, getting out of the brain, basically, out of the thinking mind. And then you are receptive. Then you feel the reciprocity. Then you can receive all those, all this inspiration. Yeah.
What what is your maybe you could speak to your philosophy. Do you believe that we come out of this world? Are we part of nature? Are we does the earth grow people like an apple tree grows apples? Or what is your idea of us in nature?
That's a beautiful question. I see us as a species as being kin to the rest of the species. So we are one big circle,
Yeah.
and we are not better or superior than any other species. We don't have any more rights to be here. And yeah, one interesting thing is also, of course, we see what human beings are doing to the planet, right? So that's a very difficult thing to kind of be with, and to see, and to witness, and to feel the emotion of that. But at the same time, I think the earth is such an intelligent
Mm,
organism, such an intelligent being, that she knows what she's doing. It's not a
yeah.
mistake that we are here, right? So it's
Right.
it's really part of her evolution. It's part of her learning, and she knows what to do. So we can trust that as well.
Yeah. The Mother Earth has all the time in the world.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So I think she's playing. I see her actually as
Mm,
a very playful being.
right.
And if you look at the evolution of the Earth, then in each period there were species that were kind of dominating, or that were, on the rise.
Hmm.
And then after some time there were different species. So it's just her way to learn, and to experiment, and to explore all the forms and shapes of life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's interesting to think that maybe we are a process in helping transform this whole part of it. Like we're a necessary process, and then there'll be a new process. There was a
Yeah,
previous process.
yeah,
That's cool to think about. I never thought about it like that. That's a beautiful way to look at it. How did
yeah.
you how did you come up with that?
Somehow I heard it from the heart of the world.
Forest bathing, right?
From force bathing. Yeah, of course we don't know, but I like this idea, this approach, because it makes me feel more at peace.
Hmm.
Because if you see it differently, if you really see us as some people call
Yeah.
human beings the cancer of the earth, or the parasites, or that is not a nice feeling to live with. And what it creates in me is paralyzed. I feel paralyzed,
Mm,
I feel depressed, and I don't feel a positive motivation to change things in the world. So seeing it in a different way, seeing us as part of the big picture, as part of the play,
yeah.
basically helps me to keep my mental health okay, and feel this positive connection to the earth, and actually use that energy to try to change something, to help.
Yeah, I like that. I'm not a huge fan of the pejorative or the negative reinforcement to try and scare you into being better. Like you should see the earth as yourself as part of the earth, and then to think about it's really a pretty poor idea to hurt yourself. So why would you hurt the earth? Like, well, why not co-create with it instead of trying to take away from it? And I think maybe this speaks to were touching on earlier about this strange sort of conditioning we get from the age of 5 to like 40 or 5 to, somewhere around there, 5 to 30 or whatever people's time frame is. We really get lost in this idea that we are separate then, right? That's a weird kind of conditioning that happens to us, isn't it?
Yeah, separate and alone. You're
Oh.
alone for all the problems. You're alone in this world, and people don't get you. The society doesn't get you. People are judging you,
Mm-hmm.
and all that. That's simply how the system is working right now, and it's really sad indeed. It's heartbreaking, literally. So usually there comes a point where either the body or the mind doesn't want to go that way anymore, and somehow they push you to, yeah, to remember really
Yeah.
what you are and what you're part of.
Yeah. And it's so obvious when you find yourself out in nature and you see the patterns, whether it's, you know, whether it's a small flower growing up to the cracks of a sidewalk, and you realize like, oh, this is they just tried to concrete over this, but they still can't stop it. Like that's my thoughts. Like there's something brewing in me that's bigger and stronger than all of these conditioning, and they can't stop it. Like, but you see the pattern, maybe a fallen down tree of like, oh, this makes a nice bridge for me to walk over, right?
Exactly.
There's so much
Exactly.
language out there to see.
So much, and I am a witness of that as a guide in each walk, each sessions,
Yeah.
that people, when they are relaxed enough, they notice these kind of things. So you need to be in a relaxed state and, yeah, kind of, able to receive that, to even notice that, because otherwise this thing up here is still going on and still thinking about your work and your relationships and everything. But once you notice that, then I've seen so many people connecting exactly those cues, like sand, warm sand, lying on a warm sand, and then the insight comes, I'm not a cactus. I'm not a cactus, and I'm ready for a relationship because I'm a plant or a being
Hmm.
that needs water. I'm not a freaking cactus that doesn't need anything to thrive, right? So, a therapist could never create this connection, but nature and being in nature, being receptive to those messages, can create that. Or somebody that would smell the dirt, smell the forest dirt, and then all of a sudden you get this association with your grandpa living
Mm.
in a totally different country, totally different continent, but that you felt connected to the land there, and that you do want to provide or enable the same connection to your children in this country with this land here.
Yeah.
And from that moment, you take your children to the forest every day. So that is just amazing, and it's happening all the time with different, indeed, like dead trees are, for example, an
Yep.
amazing source of inspiration, because you see, like, well, they're not dead, they're hosting,
Yeah.
they're enabling so much life to
Yep.
continue and to take just a different shape, different form.
Yeah. It speaks to the idea of, you know, I would say death and rebirth, but I don't think that's an accurate description. It just shows a different form. Like a fallen tree becomes a new form for our
Mhm.
fungal friends to grow on and create new life. And it's absorbed. Maybe the wisdom of that tree is being absorbed into the mycelium that's then spread around to the other trees. And it's fascinating. I think our friend Ben Palmer. Ben, thanks for hanging out with us, man. For those that are watching, Ben Palmer has some amazing writings. I would recommend everyone go click on his icon right there and check out what he's writing. He's writing some amazing stuff. But he says, amazing discussion. Humanity are in the moments of remembering that everything is oneness, which is love everywhere present. We are all part of the biggest event of all creation, 19 billion years in the making, to remember we are all love, to transcend fear, pain, and suffering, and return to unity and co-create new earth where only love exists. I see so much. Thanks, Ben. I really appreciate that. But I love where he's taking that. And I do see whether it's Dr. Randall Hanson's new book, Heal, or whether it's the conversation you and I are having. But I feel like this new world is emerging and nature's voice is stronger than ever. Is that just because of you and I are on the same vibe, or do you think that the clarion call is getting louder?
It is getting louder. It is getting louder, and you can see it throughout the years that in the past you were some kind of weirdo hugging trees. And now, actually, big organizations and companies are realizing that their people need this type
Yeah.
of connection, and that they need to go out, and that they need to take care of their well-being, because otherwise they won't be productive. They won't be feel part of the team. So even like the biggest corporations are actually embracing that, and that's big because
Yeah.
they're usually just profit oriented, but it's becoming more and more mainstream. And it's also from what I'm when I'm talking to people, it's also coming from kind of this spiritual community is also becoming part of life. It's not necessarily, it is spiritual, but it's only spiritual when you call it spiritual, right? So
Yeah.
it's just the experience of being a human on this planet, and finding a way to, yeah, to thrive here, actually, to. And yeah, there's a quote that I love that is saying that we are human beings. We're always looking for the purpose of life, like, finding the meaning of life, the purpose of life. But what we actually crave is the experience of being alive, and that's why people do extreme,
Yeah.
uh, extreme sports, for example, or that's why people do things that alter your levels of consciousness, your perception, because if you're in the body, if this is switched off, then
Yeah.
you can actually experience what it is to be alive, what it is to feel connected, to be love, and live from that point.
Yeah, I think it speaks to this idea of scarcity and abundance. When we're just switched on in the analytical mode and we're working from this perspective of, okay, I got to make money. I have this bill coming up. I can't believe this thing happened to me. This person doesn't, I hate talking to this person. Now, when you're in that mode, you're in this scarcity mindset where you don't have enough. And
Mhm.
maybe you do have enough, but like you're just not able to comprehend the miracle that you are currently living in.
Yeah.
But then when you step back, especially in nature or different states, be it breath work or plant medicine, or there's so many different ways in which you can tap into higher states or altered states of consciousness. At that point in time, it's phenomenal to see the other side switch on and you realize, wait a minute, I have everything I need. In this moment, everything's perfect. In this moment, I feel in love with everything around me. In this moment, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And if you can just stop for a minute and pull yourself in there, and it's hard sometimes, like it's really hard sometimes to step out of the conditioning. But it's, here's a question. When we talk about forest bathing and something that you do as a guide going out, obviously you have some incredible moments with yourself in nature, but what is it like to see someone make that transition? Like you get to see it as a third person, so you're watching it happen. What is that like?
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a way of living, and that's why I'm doing this, because it's not, in forest bathing we say the forest is the therapist. It's forest therapy, but the
Mm-hmm.
forest is the therapist. It's not me. And the role of the guide is actually
Right.
to open the doors of perception, open the doors of the senses, so that people can have these experiences. And once it happens and you're witnessing it without you facilitating or trying to make this happen, but you are just there holding the container,
Yeah.
helping people slow down and get into that mode so that they can experience this. It's incredible. It's magic, and it's so accessible as well, huh? Because you don't have to do anything. You don't have to travel the world. You don't have to do anything special or expensive. You can really literally get into your backyard and do this sequence to help you get into the senses and slow down. And then you don't even have to be in a big forest. You don't have to be in some beautiful outdoors. You can actually have amazing experiences like these, and insights and
Yeah.
inspiration in your backyard.
Yeah, it's once you figure out, it's like putting on glasses. Once you see through that lens, you can kind of always look back and see that lens and be like, oh, this is what they were talking about. You start to see those patterns everywhere. And it really is like learning a language. It's like
Yeah,
learning to speak the language of nature, and then you can begin to see those patterns everywhere.
absolutely.
It's a wonderful way, right?
Absolutely. And I see it as we in forest bathing, we work with different senses. So not only the five senses,
Right.
but a broader palette of senses. And one of the senses is the heartfelt sense of the present moment. And that's
That's
exactly
beautiful.
what you were mentioning. This, like, when I'm right here, right now, in this moment, there is no, there is no
Right.
problem. There are
Right.
no troubles. There's no frustration. It's right here, right now, and it's the heartfelt sense of the present moment. So that's actually one of our senses. It's an organ of perception, our heart, and but we don't train it. We don't usually use it that much. We can feel something when we meet a new person, then you get a feeling from there, or a new place makes you feel something somehow about it. But we train this brain here, and we use the eyesight and the other
Yeah.
senses, but we don't use the heartfelt sense, the heart sense, that much. But you can awaken it very easily, because of course we have it,
Yeah.
our bodies have it. And once you awaken it, then that's what you mentioned, that you can train yourself. And like each time that you, because life happens, of course we
Yeah.
all have these frustrations and situations in life, but then you know that there's a place that you can always get back to. And it can be daily. You don't have to take a whole forest bathing session with a guide, which takes 3 hours usually, but you can use elements of this and reconnect instantly, because the heart is always with you, the body is with you, and nature. There's always nature. Like in the COVID lockdowns, we learned,
Mm.
we were guiding people who were locked up in, on the 24th floor, somewhere in a
Mm.
big city, and they were getting crazy, and they craved nature and connection, and that. But you always have the skies. You always can look at the clouds passing by. You can open the window and feel the air on your skin. You can feel the sunbeams. You can see some trees just moving in the wind.
Yeah.
And it's about that. It's about directing your attention to that, slowing down, and then you're there. Then you're in the heartfelt sense of the present moment.
I love it. It's, I think on some level, I had this idea that it seemed to me in my life that I felt like my sense ratio was changing. I was only thinking about the five senses, but now that you bring this up, of course it would be different. Of course, when you experience something with your heart and your eyes and your ears, it's like you're finally taking in the whole picture and just being aware. Like I wasn't even aware of the heart as a sense, but like as soon as you said that, like all these bells and whistles started going off. Like, of course you're experiencing it through your heart. What is are there other senses too that maybe we could talk about? Maybe you can share some of those. I've never really, I don't know any of this.
Yeah, there are subtle senses, and it depends a little bit. There are different people have different lists. So I've seen also a list
Okay.
of 55 subtle senses. So it depends how far you want to go.
Yeah.
But I work with 9 senses in each session. And so these are the five, of course, that we know, but also the heartfelt sense of the present moment. You have something called proprioception, which is just the awareness. If you close your eyes, you still know about the position of your body.
Hmm.
You know how much space you're taking in. So that's the awareness of the body size, shape, orientation in space, proprioception. Then you have the interoception, which is the inner states of the body. Like if I'm hungry, if
Mm.
I need to go to the toilet, to the bathroom, all these. That
Yeah.
is also a sense. You have something called body radar, which again, we are not really using in this urban jungle mostly. But for example, the native cultures, they can orient themselves in the forest in an amazing way. They feel the direction and they can sense the direction that an animal went, for example, without seeing it, without hearing it, but they feel into it, into the direction. So that's also the like listening. So you can also call it listening with the whole body, that you're not listening with just the ears, but really being receptive with the whole body as a sense, basically. Yeah, so these are some of the subtle senses that we forgot and that we are not using that much, but that can be trained and awakened again.
I've been seeing this sort of pattern in my life and some of the things I'm reading and people I'm talking to. And it's this idea of rewilding. Like on some level, we're beginning to rewild. And it seems like the human condition too is following that pattern. Like, and maybe that's we're tied to it. Like as the world is rewilding and reclaiming some of these city areas, as people are fleeing the cities and the trees are coming back, and sometimes the wolves or the animals, it seems that we as our condition is rewilding too. Have you noticed this?
Yeah, yeah, and it's amazing to see that. That's connected to the other conversation that we just had about people, that it's not spirituality anymore. It's kind of part of the human experience, and in that way, you see more and more people bringing more and more nature into the indoor
Yeah.
spaces, into their surroundings, and taking like cold exposure and really, bringing the body back
Yeah.
to how it originally was meant to. Fasting is another way to reconnect with the innate wisdom of the body, and it's part of all the cultures, all the religions. Everyone was doing it in the past, and people are embracing it again. And at the same time, there's of course this other wave of people embracing artificial intelligence and a lot of technology. So to me, it seems like it's almost two parallel
Mm.
worlds coexisting together. So it seems almost as we were, as if we were taking both of them, and you just choose which channel you want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating to think about the way in which we try and describe the things we create based on how we were created. Like we're going to create artificial intelligence. Like I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it just the language around it seems wrong to me. Not like in a negative or bad way, but it just doesn't feel right to call this tool intelligence. It kind of seems like it's demeaning us in a way. Like we are the whole earth is the intelligence, and this thing is a tool. It's not us. It's not, maybe it's a reflection of us, and maybe that's what scares some people. It's like this is thing's us.
Mhm. It's an extension
Yes.
of the mind. So
Right.
so that's that type of intelligence that
Yeah.
might be, but that is supposed to be a tool and not the boss,
Right.
right?
Right.
So the wisdom intelligence, the deeper intelligence, is the one stored in the body, in the cells of the body, in the earth, in nature, and that one is not so loud, maybe,
Mm.
but it is much deeper. It knows what to do, and it knows how to do things without being harmful for the rest of the species and the rest of the world. So yeah, we'll see how it develops.
Yeah, I think it follows that pattern of conditioning that we spoke of earlier. I know for me at later in life, at the stage I'm at now, and a few years ago, due to life itself, the voice of my heart began speaking to me. And maybe it always has, I just never listened to it. But it seems so odd to me, and I'm still working through this, and I've gotten so much better at it, like of following my heart and listening to that voice, and you know, allowing myself to be pulled in the direction in which nature is calling to. But it's difficult at first because it's scary to let go. It's
Yeah,
scary to listen to that and be like, "Are you sure? You
yeah.
sure I should do that?" Like, do you have any tips or tricks in how to be more aligned and balanced and listen to that voice?
Yeah. Thank you for describing that, because that's the process that most people know, I think. And it is a process, and it's hard at the beginning
Yes.
because your ego is pulling you back from that. It's saying that you're being unreasonable and that won't work and it's not possible and you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna die. And but and also other people. So there can
Yeah.
be people in your family, people in your surroundings that are just worried about you.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah. Totally.
their perspective, you seem to be crazy by giving up that job and
Yes.
stopping the way of living that everybody else is living. So they can also be, again, the extension of the
Yeah.
voice in your head. But it can happen. It's a practice. It's definitely a practice, and at some point you cannot not follow it. You cannot,
Yeah.
it would be a soul killer to go with the mind-based advisor and not with your heart. So you just follow your heart because you cannot do differently. But the way in between is practice, and
Mm-hmm.
this can start with really small steps and really small moments of bringing more presence into your life. So like what you mentioned, like this moment, and I'm focused on what I can see, what I can hear, what I can feel on the skin of my body. I can feel my body literally, like
Mm.
focusing on the tip of my thumb
Yeah.
can bring me back to my body at this moment. And then kind of recognizing that what is going up here is a pattern, it's a story it's a narrative that I'm
Yeah.
telling to myself, and I don't need to follow it, and I don't need to let it create emotions. And that, so that practice, it can be a long journey, but there is also acceleration on the way. So that's also what I've been observing, that then sometimes some kind of like quantum leap happens,
Yeah.
and you're there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that you have to be working hard. That's just another type of conditioning that we get. Like if you want to reach something, if you want to change, if you want to heal, you got to work hard,
Yeah.
work all the time to fix yourself. No, not always. It can also happen just in the moment that you relax and sit down and watch a fallen tree, for example.
Yeah. I heard there's a really good quote that I like that's something along the lines of inspiration is there, but it has to find you working. You know, it wants to see you work out. Okay, this person's working out. Let's help them out. A little back, the a breeze at your back pushing you forward. Like it's
Mm.
there, and it's just sometimes taking a moment to do the work. And I think that there's a force bigger than we can possibly imagine that is constantly on the lookout for people that are trying to create positive change in their life and others' life. And when it finds you, it tests you. And it's like, okay, you passed. Time to come over here now. You did it. Congratulations. And that force is always there for people. And
Yeah,
it's waiting for you to have the courage to recognize it and you add it in yourself. And once you do that, then that for me, that's how that voice in my heart began to sing to me on a level that was so wonderful that it made me want to continue to follow it. And it does grow stronger, and it does become a point where, okay, I can't not follow it now. And it's
yeah,
still, and sometimes the directions are even scarier, but it's like, well, it was right last time. It was right last time, and pretty soon you build this playful confidence with like, okay, are you sure? Okay, let's do it. It's a
yeah.
wonderful way to live your life, and
It
it's
is.
inspiring too. When I see other people that do it, it's like, oh man, it's so wonderful. How do they do that? And you talk to them and they give you these cool tips and trips like the stuff that you're giving me now. And
Yeah.
it's a beautiful language.
And you can see it actually in somebody's body language. These eyes when somebody when people are really doing what their passion is, or
Right.
a dancer that is the dance and that is all totally the
Yeah.
whole being is in the body movement. And so that can also, yeah, that these people are great teachers, and I call them frequency holders,
I
because
love that.
they they kind of, yeah, that's what they do. And some of them
Right.
are pretty loud, so they can inspire many people, and some of them are pretty silent. So like, for example, artists that are
Mm,
totally in the flow of the present moment when they are creating, but they do not feel the need to kind of be public about it, huh? But they are also frequency holders because they are the ones that are aligned with the present moment and with the deeper wisdom. And there are some authors that are calling this the earth dreaming. The earth is
Mm.
dreaming and knows exactly what is needed at this point of time. And then some human beings, as we
Yeah.
crack open, then the light gets in and we hear the earth dreaming. And once we align with that and we follow that, then the earth is actually helping you on the way. So then all kinds of synchronicities and all kinds of like, things that are helping that you have could have never imagined are happening.
It makes me think, especially after this book that Randall and everybody contributed to so much. Sometimes I think that is the purpose of trauma is to break us open so that we can learn from this. And like there's something thinks you're strong enough. It's time. It's
Yeah,
time to break so that you can grow.
yeah.
What do you think about trauma and letting the light? I mean, you could speak more to that.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. I think it's that crack.
Yeah.
That's also a quote. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in, and that's the crack. Yeah, and yeah, some people need just a little crack, and then all the light gets in, and some souls need a bigger crack
Yeah.
and or even more cracks, a proper one. But in the suffering seems to be the healing, and in the suffering
Mm,
there's the wisdom, and it kind of breaks. Because if we are happy all the time and there are no challenges, there is no growth, and you won't
yeah.
change anything. Because why would we? Why would we, put energy into finding connections and changing things if we feel happy with everything? So, yeah.
It's interesting. I find myself and other people that I speak to sometimes talking about tragedies or traumas, just holding the idea that this is necessary is
Mhm.
sometimes enough for me to get through those times. Like, this is necessary.
Yeah,
This is a catalyst to help get you to the point. Like,
yeah,
you start looking at nature, whether it's the consumption of a caterpillar is necessary to change its form, or the snake crawling into the rough patch of dirt in the open to shed its skin, like all these crazy things that you have to go through.
yeah.
The signs
Or
are all there.
exactly. Even fires, like forest fires, can help some tree species to finally grow and are necessary for the transformation. So exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe that's where we get into trouble sometimes too, is desperately fighting off the idea that it's not necessary. Like we can save
Yeah.
this. Like
The
maybe
resistance. The
yes.
resistance of the mind, which, yeah, I call this the radical acceptance of the present moment. And that's also a practice because, of course, if you don't like it and you want to change it, you don't want to, or
Yeah.
but that's the art of life, is to accept that as what you said, as a necessary part of my path, as something that you can actually learn to embrace, even if it sounds crazy at first, like being sick, being miserable, all these things are very difficult to embrace. But for example, for my personal story, I had Lyme disease.
Hmm.
And I think really that one part of my healing was that I actually talked to the Lyme bacteria and I showed my respect to the bacteria because it's incredibly intelligent. So I
Mm,
really like told her like, wow, you're actually amazing in what you can do, and let's be friends. Let's not I'm not trying to kill you. I'm not trying to you know to I'm not it's not a war that I'm
right.
declaring. Let's coexist together. Let's be friends. And that actually changes the whole chemistry of the body, because then you change from that inner resistance
Mm.
and that into a very different cocktail of hormones and a chemistry in the body that is actually friendly, that is actually at peace.
What? What built up to that? Like, was there a period of dismay, or was there a period of being scared and frightful that finally led to that conversation?
Of course, yeah, of course. So yeah, I don't know anyone who embraces it with love
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
first moment. Like, oh, great that you're in my body and that I'm suffering and that I have no energy at all to live my life. No, of course, of course. It was exhaustion, it was resistance, it was despair. It
Mm,
was even like thoughts like, I don't want to live this life
yeah.
anymore in this body, in this
Mm,
condition. And, so a lot of struggling at first, and then somehow accepting messages from nature, in my case,
yeah.
from the dragonflies, and finding ways that resonate, that that resonate, that can help, that can heal, and trying them out. And in the end, I don't know exactly what helped. It could be the deep relaxation that I was doing, it could be this conversation that I was having, it could be some herbal supplements that I was, or maybe the mix. And but all of them resonated, and it helped in the end.
I think on some level, I know I've found myself in situations where I've said similar things, and I know other people that have. And probably, if we're being honest, everybody goes through the dark night of their soul. They get to a point where, like, I don't know if I really want to be here anymore. Maybe they
Mm.
say it, maybe they don't mean it when they say it. Maybe some people do mean it when they say it. But on some level, I think about how profound that is, because it's teaching you, I really, maybe what's really happening is I don't want to be this type of person anymore. I don't want to
Yeah,
be this anymore. Not
yeah,
necessarily that you want to leave, but like that's the ultimate, that's the ultimate admission that you're going to change, right? Like when you get to that point.
yeah, exactly. It's I don't want, if this is if this is the way that I should be here for the rest of my life, I don't want that. That is kind of
Yeah.
the so
Yeah.
either we change or we leave, but then the suffering, the resistance is so big that has to change something, something has to happen at that point. So yeah.
It's weird to think that at your lowest is when you may be making the greatest change possible. I guess it makes sense if you peel it back a little bit. Of course, like you got to hit rock bottom before you can figure out what you're going to be, or if you're going to change forms, you have to fully live that form. I don't know. It's kind of esoteric, but I think that that's sort of the language of nature is esoteric. It's symbolic. It's more. It comes to the heart and the eyes, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, you mentioned the caterpillar. That's such a great example. Like, I can
yeah,
totally imagine being a caterpillar and not wanting this anymore.
yeah, yeah.
Or a dragonfly is actually a being that spends years in the mud. And so literally in the mud, like metaphorically speaking, you're in the mud. It's dark. It's there is nothing beautiful about it, and you're stuck there.
Mm,
And but during that time, laying and rolling in the mud, the beautiful wings are growing, and the caterpillar of the dragonfly doesn't know about that.
yeah.
So one day it simply has the wings and can fly and is beautiful and it has all the freedom. And it all happened down there in the mud because it was a necessary process. And it doesn't know. It's not like someone will tell you, well, okay, you just need to lay down in the mud and grow your wings, and then you'll
Right.
be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one that spoke to me over the last few years was I have a vine. It's a it is a there's a I have a really cool, I got a small backyard, but it's all these cool trees and plants, and I have this vine that crawls up this tree, and I remember sitting out there and just thinking, like, how does it know to climb that far up that tree and then produce this flower at a 47-degree angle on August 4th at 3:21 p.m. and produce it? Like, it knows. There's this inner intelligence. And I'll never forget thinking about that and then going, That's what's happening to me right now. That's happening to me. No wonder I feel the drive. Like I'm crawling up the tree. I'm producing the flower. I am that flower. And then when you realize that resonance of like, oh my God, it's talking to me, right? It's showing me, you feel like the earth is just giving you a big hug. Like you figured it out, man. You figured it out. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm part of this thing, there's all the secrets right there in front of me and it's being revealed to me. And all these things,
Absolutely.
it's so beautiful to think of. One of the things I want people to read Randall's book and go to your site way back home and listen to some of the things you're doing, because I think that on some level you're opening the door for people to experience that, right?
Yeah. And the experience is what matters. It's not a
Yes.
theory that you read and then you say, oh, okay. But then
Yeah.
then nothing changes. You have to
Yeah.
have this lived experience of exactly what you're describing with this flower. And that's how the rest of nature, through the imaginal sense, through our heart sense, is talking to us. And you just gotta be there at that moment and receive that message.
What do people like if people go to your site way back home? Like maybe you could give us the story behind that site. Like how did that come to be?
The site, well, way back home is a broad name enough for me
Yeah.
to, like put all the aspects of coming back home to yourself and to your inner nature. So that is forest bathing, that is EcoNIDRA, that is mentoring in presence and self care
Hmm.
to come to this home here. So yeah, I was kind of building the pieces, that because it's pretty complex and it's very simple at the same time. It's coming back to the present moment, back to your body, back to nature, but there are different techniques that can help you do that and that you can apply in your daily life. And of course, at first it's helpful to have a guide, so to either join a forest bathing or a remotely guided forest bathing that you can join from your nature wherever you
Hmm.
are, or to lay down in Shavasana for an EcoNIDRA session and let yourself be guided, or to have a mentor that can help you in the beginning. But in the end, it's a daily practice, and it doesn't have to cost you a lot of time. That's what people think sometimes, so that you have to be in meditation for 3 hours a day and have like a huge discipline to do this. No, it's really small moments throughout the day that you reconnect and remind yourself.
Maybe you can speak to this idea that did you I don't know how to pronounce it. It's the Nidra. What the maybe you could speak to that. Like, is that something that you came up with, or is it something that maybe you can speak to that? Like, how did that come to be?
Yeah, so EcoNidra is indeed, I call myself the mother of EcoNidra.
Yeah, it's epic.
But so it's a blend of yoga nidra and forest bathing,
Mm,
and it's a very powerful blend, turns out to be, because forest bathing, we talked about that, so it's about
right.
connecting with nature, relaxing, getting into your senses, and receiving yeah, the reminder, basically. And yoga nidra is part of yoga, so it's an ancient practice, and it's with yoga, people usually understand the physical yoga with asanas, but yoga
Mm,
nidra is actually that you're laying on your back in the shavasana pose, and you are being guided. So it's more of a guided meditation than yoga as mostly we understand it. And EcoNidra has 3 journeys. So the EcoNidra teacher will guide you through 3 journeys: a journey through your senses, a journey, a pilgrimage through the body,
mm,
and an earth journey where you're just listening. When you're deeply relaxed on the edge of wakefulness and sleeping, and you're listening to a nature soundscape.
mm,
And there are also 2 moments that you're planting a heartfelt wish, that you're visualizing and feeling through what it feels like when you're actually living it in that deep state of relaxation. And you're partnering for each session, you're partnering with a nature being. So it could be this plant here, or the tree up there, the sun here. or a distant landscape that I love, something from my childhood, and they make this journey with you. So they are your witness, your partner. They know about your heartfelt wish that you planted in that session. And what happens is that your brain waves calm down, they slow down to the theta level. So
Hmm.
you're really balancing on this edge between sleeping and wakefulness. And sometimes you can compare it to this moment where you wake up, and just the moment before you remember who you are, what day it is, what problems you have, the sweet spot before it kind of all gets downloaded, and
Right.
then you realize like, oh yeah.
I'm here again.
Yeah. So that's the sweet spot, and it's very relaxing and very delightful. And if, as an EcoNIDRA teacher, you let people listen to pure nature sounds in that spot, then people get all kinds of associations and memories and journeys, and come back at the end of the session relaxed, but also kind of, yeah, empowered, or so it's an energized relaxation basically. And by planting that seed of the heartfelt wish, you can also change things on the level of, yeah, from the inside, the invisible.
It's amazing the tools we have to fundamentally shape our reality if we're willing to use them.
Hmm. Exactly, yeah. And some are powerful
Yeah.
and like a major experience, and some are pretty gentle. Like EcoNidra is
Hmm.
very gentle, and you can do a session, a recorded session. You can find a teacher in the world, because there's also this. I'm running a teacher training, EcoNidra teacher training, so there are teachers all around the world, and they give sessions that are either online or in yoga centers, meditation centers, plant shops,
Mm.
outdoors, retreats, festivals. So there's kind of quite a lot already, and it's a very gentle and very nourishing way to reconnect with your inner nature. And this concept of inner
Yeah.
nature, of this sense, has already been in the ancient yoga nidra. So it's not nothing that we came up with, but they already call it inner nature,
Yeah.
the ecosystem inside, and connecting with the deeper consciousness.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about the way in which something like that can spread. You know, we were talking earlier in the conversation about mycelium, the way it grows, but so too do ideas grow like that. Like EcoNIDRA can be spread through like a seed on the air, spread into a new forest. You know, so too can ideas be like that. That must be interesting to see it move and change like that, right?
I cannot tell you how touching it is to see the teachers spreading the practice. And then, of course, each one of the certified EcoNidra teachers have their own
Sure.
community. They have their groups that they feel connected with. So this could be cancer patients, or it could be
Mm,
people with long COVID, or it could be people with
yeah.
trauma, or it could be kids or seniors, or people and their animals together. And they are spreading this and bringing it into all these locations and all these groups. And as a mother of EcoNidra,
Mm,
it's just incredible to watch it. Yeah, the ripples of it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really touching. Yeah.
I think I read in one of your books or in one of your writings somewhere that as a young girl you would spend time in the willow office on top of a tree. Did you make like a spiritual, some sort of like a spiritual deal where you're going to learn this thing and then spread it to the rest of the world?
Well, maybe not consciously, but I don't know what my field
Sure.
communicated with the field of that was
Right.
like.
Right.
Yeah.
Some dragonfly and you made a deal on top of a tree when you were 4. Like, okay, we're gonna do this thing with your imaginary friends and like we're gonna create this worldwide thing. It's kind of beautiful to think about.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a nice one. And then you forget for 20
Of
years,
course.
and
Yeah.
then you remember.
Oh, it comes to you in a dream later. Or it comes to you in the drawing of your son when he's 5. Hey, mom, I drew this picture of you up here in this tree.
Yeah,
Ah, it
yeah,
happens.
yeah. That's beautiful. And yeah, it makes me think of they call it the pregnant point, right? It's like
Hmm.
I think psychologists use this image that they show you that seems to be like just a few black spots on the
Hmm.
paper. But then at some point, you realize that you're actually seeing a giraffe, for example.
Hmm.
So there is a turning point, which they call the pregnant point, when you are like, oh, meaning in
Yeah.
this, and then from that moment you can never not see the giraffe again. It's never going to be the random mixture of spots on paper. And that's kind of what's happening when you mentioned the flower or the vine on the
Yeah.
tree, right? So that's like, oh,
Yep.
and that's the pregnant point, and I will never forget it. It's a story that is alive in your body because you saw it, you felt it at the
Hmm.
moment. And from that moment, it makes sense. And then each time you see it again, you're going to remember this message that it gave you.
Yeah. And it becomes a point in which the conversation continues. Now I see the aspects of different plants. There's a great book by Jeremy Narby where he's a like a I for- an individual who goes down and learns from the indigenous tribe about their wisdom in the plants, and there's a term for that, but I can't think of the name of it. And he tells this story in his book about going down to South America and spending time with this indigenous people, him and a group of people. And the people there began telling him, like, oh, we've learned all this because the plants told us. And a large portion of that group was like, okay, we're checking out of here. These people talk to the plants, we're leaving. But he stayed and he listened and he learned. And they showed him, like, let me show you how the plants talk to us. And he's like, okay, please show me. And they were walking way out and they showed him this snake. And one of the elders said, this snake, if it bites you, will kill you in a day. The venom is so poisonous. And they showed him the snake, and the snake was a green oval head with 2 white dots on it. And he goes, but look over here. You see, if you get bit by this snake, then this plant over here has the anti-venom.
Mm.
And the plant has the leaf of the plant is shaped exactly like the head of the snake, and it has 2 white diamonds in the same spot. It's like, you can see the plant talking to us. But so far, people in the West with a closed mind go, hey, plants can't talk to you. But if you just take a moment to listen to what the plant is telling you, or the people that understand how to talk to the plant, yeah, it's totally talking to you. And you can talk to that plant if you spend enough time in nature. You
Yeah.
can go and see the way in which the insects are mining the leaves and being like, oh, this is what we're doing to the planet. I see. Got it.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for sharing that with me. It's like, it's
Yeah.
all right there.
Yeah, exactly. It's right there, and it's just about calming
Yeah.
in this brain up here, the thinking mind, so that it's not blocking it. It's not
Yeah.
blocking the receptors for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's there for all of us to take part of. And it's so democratizing to see, like, the answers are there for everybody. If you're just willing to listen and take time, and maybe be willing to be called crazy. You have to be willing to have that happen to you, right?
Yeah, and that's part of the process. So that's, like walking barefoot, right? People
Yeah.
actually secretly love it, many people, but they are kind of scared of being judged or being seen as crazy, so they don't do it. And I have many people who then joined a group, and then they say, oh, so I'm not alone, I'm not the only one. People actually do like this. And it's actually, from a point of view, it's crazy to have plastic shoes on your feet all the time and blocking this way that the earth is actually harmonizing your body and bringing things into balance and communicating. So yeah, but yeah, you're woo woo, you're a tree hugger, you're crazy, you're rewilded, or in the process of
Yeah.
rewilding.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful to think of. Kat, I love talking to you. This is really fun.
Yeah,
And I I'm looking forward to maybe having more conversations, and maybe we get a panel together and have more voices in the tent and coming up with more
absolutely.
ideas. That would be a great time. But before I let you go, where can people find you? What do you have coming up and what are you excited about?
Thank you. Yeah, so that's a great idea. So let's do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned Way Back Home. So that's
Hmm.
wayback.home.info, which is my like an umbrella for
Okay.
all the practices and ways to get in touch and to get back home. But you can also people can also go to econidra.com, which is specifically about econidra and where you can find all the teachers around the world. So maybe there's a teacher close to you and you can join their session. You can
Hmm.
also do the econidra teacher training if you feel the calling to become the voice that reconnects people and the earth. And yeah, many exciting things coming. So the teacher training is, for example, being prepared to be in different languages. There are my dragonflies, my certified econidra teachers are translating the training into Spanish and Dutch and different languages. So yeah, things are coming up, and please feel free to connect. I'm always happy to connect.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody that's listening to this, whether you're watching us live this evening or this morning or wherever you are, or maybe you're listening to the podcast and you're getting curious and you want to find your way back home. Go down to the show notes, click on the link, reach out to Kat, check her out in the new book by Randall Hansen. For those
Yeah.
looking, that's what it looks like here. She's got an amazing multiple parts in the book that explain her story, how she kind of figured things out a little bit, and on top of that, she's got some great insights into the modalities that she helps train people with. So I would point people towards that. The links will be in the show notes down there. And Kat, hang on briefly afterwards. I'll speak to you briefly. But to everyone that hung out with us today, I think our friend Shane Smith here sums it up beautiful by using the word brilliant. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Ben. And thank you to everybody who got to play a part with us today. That's all we got. Ladies and gentlemen, aloha.
Thank you.
All right.